Hi, happy Chanukah. Welcome back to the virtual Chanukah story time. I'm so glad you're here. This time we're going to read The Nine Spoons. A very special Chanukah story. So listen closely because when we're done, I'm going to ask a question. And if you know the answer, you might be entered into a raffle to win a prize. The entire family had enjoyed Oma's famous latkes, down to the last delicious crumb. And the children were finished playing the dreidel game. The last night of Hanukkah was drawing to a close. The flames in the big silver menorah were flickering out, but the light in the strange, twisted little structure nearby shone brightly. Sarah, the youngest grandchild, climbed onto Oma's lap. "Tell us the story of the children's menorah, Oma," she said. Yes, tell us the story," the other children begged as they gathered in a circle around Oma's feet. Although the adults were ready to leave and were holding the children's coats, they sat down to wait until the story is told. Are you ready? We're going to go back in time now, a long time ago during the war, and listen to Oma's story. "It was the winter before the war ended," Oma began. "A cold, dreary time. Early one morning, Leah crawled into my bunk and poked me until I awoke. 'Minna,' she called out. 'Shh,' I said. The shrill shouting that woke us each day had not yet begun, and the other exhausted woman was still asleep. 'It's snowing, Minna,' Leah whispered. 'Come and see how beautiful it looks outside.' There were 7 children in our barracks. But I felt closest to Leah, said Oma. Maybe because she was the youngest, only 4 years old. In spite of the cold, I crawled out of my bunk and walked with the excited little girl to the one doorway in our barracks. Sure enough, heavy white flakes were falling from the dusky sky. Snow covered the bare ground around the bunker, and the little white mounds filled the links of the electric fence that surrounded the camp. The guard tower looked like a misty giant, Aaron said, remembering the story from last year. Yes, Oma said, but its mean searchlight eye was dimmed by the snow. You could see the search tower there, and it looks very scary. It is beautiful, I told Leah. Now you must come back to bed. It's still night. I took her into my bunk, and she snuggled between Razel, my bunkmate, and me. Leah soon fell asleep, but we had awakened Razel. It's the first snow of the winter, I told her. Razel nodded. It's Kislev already. Soon it will be Hanukkah. Even without a calendar, Razel already knew what the date was and remembered exactly when the Jewish holidays fell. The children should have a menorah, Razel said. But how? I asked. It's really hard to make a menorah during the war, right? I could make one, Razel said after a few moments of thought. I could make one out of spoons. How do you think she could make a menorah out of spoons? Razel had been an artist before the war. She was so good with her hands. In the camp, she worked in the sewing room, repairing the uniforms of the Nazi guards. Sometimes she smuggled out a needle and enough thread to stitch together the rags we wore. If anyone could figure out a way to make a menorah, surely Razel could do it. Benny, Oma's 10-year-old grandson, spoke up. Razel said she would need 9 spoons, right? That's right, Benny, Oma said. And in the camp, spoons were valued like gold. That's how precious they were. When we first came, everyone received a metal bowl to hold the watery soup and scraps of food they gave us. But getting a spoon was our own problem. Whoever had one was able to scoop up every last drop of food. So how could we possibly gather 9 precious spoons to make a menorah? See, it would be really hard. People don't want to give up their only spoon. Did you have a spoon, Oma? Asked Sarah. She knew the answer, but liked to ask that question whenever her grandmother told the story. Yes, I did. I took it with me wherever I went, and even slept with it at night. Oma closed her eyes, remembering. Then you had a great idea, Aaron said proudly. Oma continued in a soft, shaky voice. I said, Razel, if you share your spoon with me at meal times, I'll give you my spoon for the menorah. That's very nice of her. Remember, she only has 1 spoon, and she won't be able to get another one, but she wants to give it for the menorah. Of course I'll share, said Razel. Now we already have 1 spoon. Just then we heard someone tap on the bottom of our bunk. Miriam heard us talking. Hindle and I will share a spoon, she whispered. Oma held up 2 fingers. Now we have 2. Okay, 2 out of 9. 7 more to go. That morning, walking through the slush to get to the factory where I worked, I saw a piece of metal glittering in the mud. It was an old bent spoon, a miracle. Since hundreds of women walked that way each day, there was no way to find out which poor soul had dropped it. Now, we had 3 spoons. 3 out of 9. That evening, as we stood in line for some food, Hindle came up behind me and quickly thrust something cold into my hand. Can you guess what it was? It was a beautiful silver spoon. It was in the pocket of a suit, she said quietly. Oma took a deep breath and continued. You see, Hindle's job was to sort through mountains of valuable things for the guards, things they had taken away from us as soon as we came into the camp. Jewelry, clothing, combs, even pictures of our families. Hindle could have gotten into terrible trouble for bringing anything to us, but she wanted to help with the menorah. So she risked her life to get spoon number 4 for the special Chanukah menorah during the war. Now we have 4 spoons. That cold night, as we huddled together for warmth, Miriam bent down and pushed 2 pieces of metal into the bunk. I felt them in the darkness. Can you guess what they were? You got it. They were rusty. The handles were cracked, but they were spoons. Where did you get them? I asked in amazement. Miriam looked around fearfully before she answered. I found them in the garbage. Miriam worked in the kitchen. If she had been caught taking spoons or anything out of the garbage, she could have been badly punished by the guards. You see, here's another girl who's risking her life for their special menorah, because these girls really want their own menorah for Chanukah. Oma's eyes were bright with tears. Now we had 6 spoons. How many more do they need? 3. A few days later, Liba, a woman who had been just sent to our barracks, brought in 2 more spoons, nearly new. We wondered how she found out about the menorah. Did the guards know too? Would they take away our spoons? What would they do to us? Don't worry, said Liba. All the women in the camp know about the menorah, but it's still a secret from the guards. Liba told us that she washed the clothes and cleaned the house of one of the guards. For doing this, he offered her some extra food. Even though she, like the rest of us, felt hungry all the time, she told him she wanted spoons instead. Now we had 8 spoons. Sarah held up 8 fingers instead. You still needed 1 more spoon. That's right, said Oma. It was just 2 days until Chanukah, and we still needed 1 more spoon for the menorah. What do you think? Will they find your last spoon? Will they have a menorah? We thought about it all day while we worked. We whispered about it as we ate our watery soup and stale bread. We wondered about it as we lay awake on the hard boards that were our beds. Before I fell asleep that night, I asked Hashem to please send us 1 more spoon for our menorah. Finally, on the last night before Chanukah, a young woman we had never seen before brought us a rough, handmade spoon. It was my sister's, was all she said. They didn't know where it was from. Now we had 9 spoons. 9 spoons, little Sarah murmured sleepily. Early the next morning, Razel woke me gently. Look, she whispered. There, between us in our bunk, stood a menorah for the children. Razel had twisted the handles of the 9 spoons into a stem and stuck it into a piece of wood so it could stand. She'd bent the round parts back to hold the flames. The shamish spoon could be picked up to light the others and replaced in the twisted base. It's a real menorah they made out of spoons. The women woke up, anxious to see Razel's handiwork. They crowded around her, amazed and delighted with the little menorah. They did it! Did you think they could make their own menorah? They really did it. That night, when it seemed safe, Hindle gathered all the children to the space in front of our bunk. Miriam filled the first spoon and the shamish with fat she had saved from the kitchen. Razel rolled 2 eggs from some cotton thread she had brought from the sewing room. With one of the matches that I got from a worker in the factory, I lit the shamish. and lit the first Chanukah light. Oma smiled. It was our own special Chanukah miracle. See how these people look so happy? Because in the war, you can't always find the menorah. And they were so glad they did it. They got 9 spoons and they have their very own menorah. For 8 nights, we lit the flames in our menorah, and the children had a Chanukah to remember. I'll remember, Benny said softly. I'll always remember, said Aaron. Oma hugged sleepy Sarah and carried her over to the Chanukah lights. Spellbound, the other children rose and stood silently around the precious menorah from long ago. Look, Oma! Sarah's voice was full of wonder. The flames in the children's menorah are still burning. The end. Now I have a question to ask you. If you could remember any one of the spoons where they got it from, write it below in the comments. And then you will be entered into a special raffle. And you might just win your own Jewish book. So try to remember, where did any of the spoons, even just one, where they got it from to make this special menorah? I'm so happy you listened to this story. Tomorrow at 5 o'clock, we're going to hear the third story. So be back here. Happy Chanukah!